So I wanted to start off the show today talking about some things that we see as dark and negative, but that actually are not so, but it's just the way we think about them that makes us think of it that way, and I'll explain what I mean. So, two psychological concepts. One is the unconscious, and the other is our shadow. And so, shadow, of course, implies dark, because it's in the shadow, and so because of that we think of it as negative. And unconscious tends to have this connotation for most people, because we say, oh, that's in your unconscious, or you have unconscious desires or feelings. And because of how the unconscious came to be conceptualized, it tends to be associated with something negative or dark. And that is not at all the case for both the unconscious and when we consider the shadow. So I'll give some types of definitions or descriptions of them so we can know what we're talking about, and then get into what I mean by the fact that they're actually not dark or negative, even though they tend to have that connotation or association for many people. So the unconscious has this dark image, we can say, or dark way of being seen when we consider when it came about. And Freud, along with others, Joseph Breuer, if you recall in the book Why Nietzsche Wept, we learned that I learned about Joseph Breuer's contribution to the unconscious as well. But we see that it had this understanding that it was these things that were causing people distress. So, for example, hysterical symptoms, or if they were having a conversion disorder. So let's say someone doesn't have any physical issue but is not able to do something because of a psychological impediment in their unconscious. And because of the Victorian era where these ideas were coming about, the mindset that these things could not be talked about, sex and other things that were taboo, it came to be seen and conceptualized that the unconscious had these negative, dark parts of ourself, and that's not good. So anything unconscious is bad or dark, and that's not true at all. And so the shadow, this is more of a Jungian concept, but others discuss it as well, and that's essentially where at some point in our life, usually in our childhood, we learn to put away some aspects of ourself because either they are being responded to poorly, or we're seeing it modeled in other people and we see it really bad, and so we think we should get rid of that part of ourselves. But for various reasons, all of us are putting some parts of ourselves away. And so as a human being, or a full human being, we want to have access to all the different parts of being human. But what we see is that for practically all of us, there are some parts we've put in the shadow. So, for example, if you got sad as a child and your parents responded in a way that made you feel really bad about that you shouldn't be sad, that it makes them sad, that they don't love you when you're sad, you don't get attention when you're sad, for a variety of reasons, you might have learned to put this aspect of yourself away, that I'm never going to be sad. And it could be so dissociated from yourself that you are not even aware of it. So there actually is a connection between the unconscious and the shadow that you might not even realize you're sad. So if you've put those feelings in your shadow and you ask someone if they're feeling sad, they'll say, no, I'm good, I'm happy. But it's actually not because there isn't any sadness there, but that they are disconnected to it or from it, and they are unaware of it. So again, that's where the unconscious and actually the shadow can be connected in that way. But in neither case does it mean what's in those places, in the unconscious or in the shadow, or actually negative or dark things. They are just things that we are either unaware of in the unconscious, or aspects of ourselves that we are not in touch with. So your shadow is not dark things or negative things. Your shadow is just parts that are in the dark to you, or that you have put in the dark because you were told they were not safe or not okay to express. And so the unconscious is also not parts of you that are bad. It's just that as a human being, or if we look at the human brain, there's no way you can be conscious of everything that you can have in your brain. It's just not possible for you to attend to everything all the time. We are aware of so much more. Right now, as you're listening to me, you're hopefully focusing on what I'm saying, but there are so many things that if I mention, or if you think about, or if something brings to your mind, you'll become aware of so many more facts or things about that. So right now I can then say, think about your mother, and then a whole bunch of things will come up related to your mother. But 10 seconds ago, before I mentioned that, those things wouldn't have been on your mind. Doesn't mean they were in your conscious because they were dark. It's just this awareness that unconscious really means not conscious, things that you're not aware of in that moment, which just includes all the things that your brain is holding on to, all the different things it can access or bring up, but it can't bring up everything at once. So actually the unconscious is a wonderful thing. It's a great thing that we have that. If we couldn't have that, we would be only able to do so little, because we would only have what we're conscious of, and we'd have to respond in that way. So then unconscious is actually a very good thing. And an analogy that came to my mind to reframe or give a different image of how we can think of the unconscious is like our brain is a library. And so yes, memory is a reconstructive process, and I don't want to feed that myth that our memory is something that you can read back like a book or like a video. But however, we know that there's a lot that we store in our brain. And so our brain is like a library. And you might check out just one book at a time. So that's what you make conscious, is I've checked out one book and I'm reading it. But it doesn't mean all the other books in the library that I'm not thinking of right now are negative or dark, that it's a bad place. It just means that I can't be conscious of it all the time. I can only be conscious of a very, very small sliver of what I possibly could know, similar to how I'm just checking out one book and reading it, and I can read that book, but I'm not aware of all the other things that are there, but I can be if I then go access them, or if somehow they're brought up. So I think that library image could make it seem that it's not a dark thing. It's actually, there's so many great places there and so many good things that we have. And of course, yes, we have pains and traumas and things that are there that can be hurtful or dark or have certain feelings, but that is just how we can have parts of our physical body that might have pains or things that are there. Doesn't mean the whole thing is bad. It just means that there are some aspects of it that might have some pain or darkness that is there, but overall it's a very good thing. And so the shadow, similarly, when we hear shadow, it sounds like something scary, something bad, or that it's been put in the shadow, or it's in the dark because it's bad. But that's actually what we have to reframe for ourselves, is that that's how we feel, is that we've put these parts away because they are bad. But if we want to become psychologically more healthy, we want to be able to embrace those parts of ourselves to become a more full human being for ourselves and in our relationships and how we interact with the world. So that analogy I use of someone who is putting their sadness away, it might seem like, well, why would it be sad or bad to put sadness away? Well, it's not that sadness feels good, but sadness does have value in that it gives us information. And so if we cut off any feeling or any aspect of ourselves, we're cutting off something that can have value. So if you're not aware of your sadness or not in touch with it, then when something happens and it makes you sad, you won't be as in touch with it, and you also won't feel okay expressing it. So towards yourself, you'll be missing information that something is bothering you or upsetting you. And towards other people, you won't be able to express that. So let's say a friend, loved one made you sad. If you're not aware of your sadness, it actually takes away from what you can share and experience with that person. And it's so similar to if we are numb to some part of our body, that's not good. You might think, well, it's good, you don't feel pain there. That's true, but you also can't get information about pain or even pleasure or what else is going on to know what's going on. And so if we numb some part of our psyche, it's going to hurt us. It doesn't help us. Even if moment to moment or in a particular moment we might prefer not to feel a certain way, it hurts us when we are not in touch with those parts of ourselves. Or let's say being assertive is something that you've put away, that you shouldn't ask for things, you shouldn't upset anyone, avoid conflict, all those things. And you've learned that this is the right way to be from your interactions with your family, and then it might get reinforced by other people, and you might find people that further reinforce that want you to avoid conflict, let's say. And so it feels like nothing's wrong. But you will come to realize you will tend to resent people you have relationships with because your needs are getting sacrificed or are not being met. Not necessarily because they won't let you express them, but you yourself have put that in the shadow. So it's not that those needs are bad, or it doesn't mean that being assertive is bad. It's actually quite good and healthy. But you've put it in the dark because you think, or you've been told and learned, that it's not healthy or good for you to be that way, to think that way, or to express yourself in that way. So we can see that both the unconscious and also our shadow, or the parts of ourself we've put in the shadow, they're not dark, bad things. They are things that, in the case of the unconscious, have to be in the dark at any given time. We can only be conscious and aware of a small sliver. You'd be overwhelmed if every thought, memory, feeling you've ever had was in your awareness all the time. You wouldn't be able to focus on one thing to then take care of whatever you need to take care of in that moment. So we need the unconscious, or for things to not be conscious, and they're not just dark desires that are being unexpressed, and then when we get to see them, we see how bad we really are. No, it's just we are human beings with multifaceted thoughts, feelings, beliefs, all sorts of things. And yes, some of them might feel dark or be that way, but it doesn't mean the unconscious or whatever is unconscious is dark. And similarly, our shadow, it's not in the shadow because these are bad parts of ourself. It's that unfortunately we learned that they were bad and we put them away, but they're actually parts of ourself that if we want to become healthier, need to integrate, to recognize that the healthiest person is one that has the flexibility to experience different feelings and all the variety of human feelings, and also to then express the human repertoire of behaviors and interactions in return. So it's not good to put parts of ourselves away, and they're not in the dark because they're bad, but because we learned they were. So at times I've mentioned about rebranding the unconscious, and I think the shadow has the same feeling for me, the sense that it sounds dark, but it's actually, we've put it in the dark where bringing it to light will actually improve ourselves and our lives. Okay, let's go to a commercial break. Studio number 310-441-0555. We'll be right back.